All right, let's dive in. Today, we're talking about three massive fields: AI, big data, and genomics, and how they're merging to totally transform medicine as we know it. Just think about that for a second. Imagine a world where medicine isn't about what works for most people, but what works for you. Treatments crafted literally from your own biological source code. This isn't some far-off future. It's happening right now, and it's called precision medicine.
You know, to really get where we're going, you have to understand where we've been. For decades, the whole game in medicine was finding that one blockbuster drug, the one that worked for the so-called average patient. But that leaves a huge question on the table, right? What about all the people who aren't average?
And this slide really breaks it down. Traditional medicine, it's kind of like a sledgehammer. It treats a disease based on averages. But precision medicine, it's more like a scalpel. It uses your specific genes, your lifestyle, your environment to tailor a treatment that is unique to you. So how do we get that personal? Well, it all starts with the body's own blueprint. The first major piece of this puzzle is our personal instruction manual, the genome. You can think of it as the foundation, the raw data layer that makes everything else possible.
So, your genome is simply the complete set of your DNA. It's billions of letters of code that hold the instructions for building and running your entire body. Now, for the longest time, trying to read this code was just astronomically expensive. But thanks to a complete technological revolution, sequencing a whole genome is now faster and cheaper than ever. We can finally start to unlock the secrets that are inside.
And what's just incredible is the level of detail we can get. We can now connect a single gene sitting at a very specific address on a chromosome directly to a specific disorder. And we're not talking about some vague guess here. This is a direct line from one tiny piece of code to a major health outcome. This is the kind of precision we're talking about.
So, what does this actually look like on paper?
Well, it looks like this. This bit of code, T of 8,21, describes a tiny piece of chromosome 8 breaking off and swapping places with a piece from chromosome 21. It sounds so small, right? But that one tiny change is a known trigger for acute myeloid leukemia. Finding these needles in the genomic haystack is the first critical step. But the blueprint, that's only part of the story.
Because here's the thing, your genome doesn't exist in a bubble. To get the whole picture, we have to put that blueprint into a much, much larger context. So, if your genome is one book, the next step is to build the entire library of your health data around.
And this library is absolutely massive. We're talking about pulling in data from medical scans, from all your electronic health records, even the data from the fitness tracker on your wrist. All of it gets combined with these other deep layers of biological data to create this huge multidimensional view of your health.
One key part of this is something called metabolomics. So if your genome is the blueprint for the building, metabolomics is like a live report from the construction site. It's a real-time snapshot of your body's chemistry in action. Okay, so now we've got the blueprint and this giant data library. So who or what is possibly going to read all of it?
And that's where our third piece of the puzzle slots in: artificial intelligence. You can think of AI as the superpowered analyst that can swim through this ocean of information and spot patterns that no human ever could. The real engine here is machine learning. Basically, we feed these AI models all that data, the genomes, the health records, the scans, and they teach themselves to find these incredibly subtle patterns that are completely invisible to the human eye. They can find a faint link between, say, a genetic marker and a lab result that might predict a disease years before it ever shows up. And this isn't just some black box magic. It's a really careful process. First, the data gets cleaned up and organized. Then, it's fed to the model to learn from. And finally, it's tested over and over again to see how accurate its predictions are. It's this careful, rigorous validation that builds the trust we absolutely need to start using AI in medicine.
Okay, so that's the theory, right? You've got the blueprint, the library, and the analyst. But what does this actually look like in the real world for a patient? Let's open up a case file.
So let's take a patient with this very rare metabolic disorder. Instead of just treating the symptoms, doctors pull together all these different data streams: lab results, organic acids, and, the crucial part, the gene sequencing. The combined analysis pointed to a totally unique solution. It wasn't a drug, it was a highly targeted diet. And the result? It was life-changing. It could actually reverse severe neurological problems. That is the power of precision. So, this is an incredibly powerful new toolkit we're building. But as we all know, with that kind of power comes some serious responsibility. And as we charge ahead, we have to be really thoughtful about navigating some very real challenges.
The promise is just immense. We're talking personalized cures, predicting diseases before they start, truly empowering patients. But the risks are just as big. How do we protect this unbelievably sensitive data? How do we make sure the algorithms aren't biased? And maybe, most importantly, how do we make sure these amazing breakthroughs get to everybody, not just the people who can afford them?
We are at the very, very beginning of this new chapter. Our DNA, the code that literally makes us who we are, is becoming an open book. And as AI becomes fluent in its language, the real question for all of us isn't just, what can we learn? It's, what should we learn? What questions are we prepared to ask? And what are we going to do with the answers?